and welcome to the American Cornerstone Institute, our event on Foster Youth Awareness Month. I'm Evelyn Lim. I'm the Director of Policy at ACI, and I'd like to introduce a man who needs no introduction, Dr. Ben Carson.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, and especially want to thank the panelists who are with us today. You know, the whole concept of homelessness and disadvantage in our society is one that we need to pay very close attention to. And there are approximately 20,000 foster youth who age out of foster care each year. That's a lot of people. And, you know, a very significant number of them, a quarter at least, will end up homeless over the next 4-year period. And an even larger number than that end up in very unsatisfactory living conditions. And if you really think about your own life, you know, when you were growing up, when you turned 18, were you ready to just be out there with no support on your own? I don't think so. There are very few people who are really going to be able to make it in that situation, and nor should they be asked to do so. And, you know, Adora is going to tell you a little bit more about how it came to be that the federal government got very, very interested in this issue. But we need to be interested in homelessness in general. You know, it's a significant problem. And particularly on the West Coast, there have been a lot of people who have big hearts. They're very compassionate. And they say, let's find a place for this person. And they find a place for the person, but nothing really changes. In many cases, they don't even want the place. What we really need to be thinking about is, why is that person homeless? That's what we call housing second. Housing first is get them off the street. Housing second is, why are they homeless? Diagnose the problem. And then housing third, try to fix it. You know, in many cases, we're dealing with mental illness, or we're dealing with drug addiction, in many cases, dealing with both of those things. And if you don't address those issues, are you really doing these people a favor? You know, these are wonderful individuals in many cases. They've fallen into a situation that they cannot control themselves. And that's where society comes in. And any real compassionate society will recognize that and not use this as a political tool. This is something that, in fact, should be of great concern and interest to every single American. So I'm very happy that we're talking about this today. We're focusing on the foster youth, but of course, we're interested in this as an overall societal issue.
Great, thank you, Dr. Carson. And just a couple of ground rules for everyone who's watching. So the chat will be open throughout the event. Please send us your questions and we'll try to get through them during our time together. And this event is also being recorded, so it will be available on our website at americancornerstone.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter and you'll be the first to hear about our programs and events. So I'd love to introduce you all to our panelists. We have Lynn Johnson with us, who is the Vice President of Children's Initiatives at CityServe and former Assistant Secretary at HHS.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are in the country today. I just want to say one thing very, very important to each one of you, and Secretary Carson, having worked right down the street from where your office was, having watched each and every one of you, your dedication to this issue, to foster children, to homelessness, to the hungry, to the scared, is very evident and has not stopped. You've left behind a legacy that I am very proud that I know each one of you. So thank you. I just wanted to start with that. Good work and hard work. And so thank you for your service, for all that you've done. I am 36 years married to my husband, 3 adult kids, and they joke because I have gotten to know kids who have aged out that they may have 20 to 30 more siblings in the next year or two. And they're all adults. They're all wanting to make sure Colorado has adult adoption. So super fun staying in touch with kids who have aged out of the system and who are trying really hard to find their way with barriers everywhere they turn. So that's where my heart is. I was a probation and parole officer for adults for 18 years, and then I became the human service director and ran huge programs for many, many, many years. And that's how I got involved in this work in the first place, I was passionate about stopping human trafficking. And so I was able to get to know the young kids who have been trafficked because they were runaways, oftentimes from my very own foster care system. Then I moved to be assistant secretary for the administration of children and families. My confirmation took a while. So in September of 2018, I decided I had to pick two things that we could have an impact on. And where I was so blessed was the fact that HUD was doing the same thing. We were also talking at the White House about opportunity zones. We had the Envision centers. And so I picked 122,000 kids that are waiting for a forever home, which Dr. Carson was right. 20,000 of them age out to nobody. And then we've also got the front end. 60% of children are removed from their homes because of the consequences of poverty, which Dr. Carson also mentioned: trauma, drug abuse, mental health, unemployment, all things that if we wrap around them, we could stop. So that's how I got involved in this. Those are the two areas, front and back, simultaneously with other agencies, so that together we're more powerful and we actually could have outcomes and impacts. So that's a little about me.
Great, thanks, Lynn.
You're welcome.
And Chris Patterson, who, speaking of working at HUD, this was one of his initiatives that he worked on. He's a former RA, regional administrator at HUD, and is currently the president at Breakthrough Inc. and Steadfast Supported Living Inc. Hi, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Evelyn. And thank you very much, Secretary Carson, Dr. Carson, and Lynn and Adora and Jamal. I think the biggest thing that I'd like to echo is the same thing that Lynn just mentioned, is the fact that we look at what's happening across the country. You know, you look at homelessness and you look at foster youth, and you look at, the things that I think we as adults and as parents and who are training the future leaders need to be aware that homelessness, it's not just something that's a tagline. I believe myself, homelessness is a national security issue. It is an issue where you're looking at the disparities across the nation. And as Dr. Carson had stated before, on the West Coast, it's definitely more challenging, which it definitely is, having been in that region, and especially much where we can see what's happening on Skid Row and other bigger cities, the challenges we face and the political divisiveness, and the fact that this is a bipartisan issue, which we all need to support. And being a former foster youth and understanding as that is the national lead for the Foster Youth Initiative, we worked really hard. And I think the biggest thing is we proved that it's very much possible to be out of your silos, and you can work with each other on a very solid platform to get things done to help better the communities at large. I also have 4 kids ranging from 32 to 13. So I think you look at the importance of what we're going to do for succession or legacy building, and you have to have the heart, the passion, the desire to push forward regardless of the expected or unexpected challenges you may face. And in the end, it's all worth it. So thanks.
Turn it over to Jamal Callahan, who was instrumental in working with HUD to get some of our programs pulled together for foster youth. Hi, Jamal.
Hello. Again, thanks for having me. And, I speak for all of the alumni and advocates who, for 6 long years, we worked on housing policies. And, when we look at where FYI is, and we look at where the Fostering Stable Housing Opportunity Act is, it went through a lot of iterations. But being able to work with HUD at Dr. Carson's helm and being able to have consistent meetings. And one thing we always pride ourselves in this partnership was that there was staff that listened. We wouldn't be where we are with this initiative if it wasn't for the guidance and the leadership of Dr. Carson, Lynn Johnson, at HHS when you were there. And all of the advocates and the young people who really put their hearts into making sure that what we do is stop homelessness from happening coming out of the foster care system. I've worked in this system for 20 years. I'm a product of the system. And one thing that I've dedicated my life to is to make sure that we are improving outcomes at all levels, which is why I train foster parents, which is why I train staffs. I consult with agencies around the country to make sure that we're shifting the culture of what we do for our youth aging out of care. And again, I'm just happy to be here. And again, I want to thank Dr. Carson just for being able to move this initiative along as far as we've gotten it thus far.
Great, thank you. And we already have a question from our chat that I wanted to bring up from the start. It's from Dr. John Degarmo from the Foster Care Institute. And he talks about, he's asking about how faith-based organizations can help before foster youth transition out of foster care. And I think that's one of the things that we'd like to discuss is how do we address some of the issues with foster care now?
I'm so glad that that question was asked, because one of the things that I discovered during my 4 years at HUD is that the programs that work best are the ones where there are public-private partnerships. And partnering with the faith-based organizations is absolutely fantastic. We had a program that was started, the Mustard Seed Program, which comes from the Bible, the book of Matthew. The faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. Well, we had a lot of problems that were mountain-sized that needed to be moved. And getting these various faith-based organizations to start this, and we would be more acting in a supporting role, and they would take ownership and we would facilitate the way that they were able to do things, bearing in mind that before there was a HUD, before there was an HSS, there were faith-based communities that did the same stuff, maybe did it even better, because they had personal relationships with people. And that's where the real advantage comes in, when you develop a relationship, because then those individuals feel much more of an obligation, quite frankly, to try to go along with the program and make it work, than if there's just some nebulous bureaucrat at the end of the telephone talking to them.
I feel like Dr. Degarmo threw us a softball on this one, because I know where Dr. Carson's heart is, but I've worked with John numerous times, but it also is my new job. So as I left the administration, January 20th, I came back thinking, how can we just stop what we're doing for foster kids and those that have aged out, and caring about people? We've got momentum. We have all but 5 governors were all in to focus on these kids. How do we stop this? And City Serve International called me and said, do you want to keep this work going? Do you want to work to bring all of the churches together as a lead to wrap around nonprofits and the kids, so that we have no kids waiting? 122,000 to 0. And we did have 126,000 to 122,000. So in 1 year we did fairly well, but we're not done. And we need those churches. We have so many churches. I just need 122,000 of them to step up, wrap around families, love up siblings, take care of kids, and do it for the right reasons. And we get to 0. And then we start talking about preventing it. Churches are the best places to do that front end prevention, so kids don't get removed in the first place. And what a better community for our kids. So I think, John, thanks for the question. And I am excited that I am still doing this faith work in the All In Challenge. It's exciting.
Great, thanks, Lynn. I'll ask Chris if he wants to comment a little bit about the public-private partnership.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is Dr. Carson said, is the public-private partnership is crucial. You realistically cannot expect, state and federal governments to fix the problems that we as society has created in our own family structure or our own communities, or the lack of maybe some of the parental roles or things that we faced. As a former foster youth like Jamal and Adora, we look at everything from a more direct lens. We're all very vocal with each other. We're all very direct with each other. We talk about things that we've seen and experienced in the systems. And we know how important it is for the public-private partnerships, where you bring every single organization possible to the community, whether it's faith-based, for-profit, nonprofit, corporate, or so on. And I think the biggest thing is to make sure that people recognize that, the challenges that those youth have faced are all different. Everybody has a different length of stay. Some have been longer. Myself, most of my life was in foster care, so I have a different perspective than the other youth may have had, but we all come together for the same consensus with the professionals, with people like Lan and Dr. Carson and others that we worked with. So I think the biggest thing is the public-private partnership is crucial. I mean, it works within the colleges, it works within the communities, it works within the faith-based areas, and we can't do it without it.
And Jamal, I just want to ask you, because you have lived experience as well in this, and just wanted to see if you had any comments about how this can work a little bit better.
One, we have to truly understand that the relationships are at the ground level. And unless we have these federal community relationships and partnerships, then it's going to be hard to get even the young people to move past where they are. I look at some of the community centers that I used to go to as a kid, and I had great relationships with the staff there. And for them to be able to tap into federal dollars, to federal programming, to help kids like myself, they needed to have that type of partnership. So it's crucial to have those type of partnerships in place, just as we go around and try to continue to implement FYI. It's crucial to have the partnerships between child welfare and the housing authorities. It just doesn't work without it. So I think we're in a great space. We just have to continue to foster those relationships.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Foster Youth to Independence initiative that HUD does, since I'm not sure everyone in our audience knows what that is. And it's something that I know that all of us who are alum of HUD are really proud of. And this is one of those things where we talk about how government doesn't always work, but this is a situation where it does, and it does quickly. Dr. Carson, do you want to talk a little bit about how that happened? You were instrumental in getting this through.
Actually, I'm going to punt that to Adora.
Hello, everyone. So basically, to talk a little bit about FYI, FYI is an initiative that basically was stemmed from the youth, for the youth, by the youth, and the federal government, with Dr. Carson's help, they implemented it basically to bridge the gap between homelessness for foster care youth emancipating from the system post age 21. Much like Dr. Carson said earlier, at 18, maybe even 21 in some states, it's unfathomable to expect that foster youth that were kind of coddled by the government growing up and having all these opportunities that many of them didn't even know about, just kind of taken away from them. And the only support system that they've ever known just stripped from them, and they have to go out into the world to however way to see fit. With FYI, that basically takes all of that away. It into the youth's life to be able to allow them to be able to allow them to go forth with their goals, with their dreams, with their aspirations through life. Usually it's about a 3 to 5 year voucher, depending.
I'm going to pick up the baton because we've lost communication with Adora. But what she's saying is absolutely the way it happened. There were young people like her, like Jamal, who actually came. They took the initiative to come to HUD and to present, something that they had thought out very well in terms of what was missing in their lives. And their presentation was so cogent that it inspired, I believe, the staff at HUD. People say nothing quick ever happens in the government, but from the time they came until the time the first grants were given out, it was 4 months. Let me tell you, that's lightning speed when you're talking about government and coordinating these services, with other government agencies, because it wasn't just a matter of providing a voucher so that they would have a place to live. Obviously, that's very important, but it's also critical to have those services, the wraparound services, the things that they might need, be that healthcare, be that, GED, be it other types of training. Different folks have different strokes, but that's why we coordinated this with other agencies and with the various state and local government agencies. And it was very, very effective. And, I've had a chance to visit some of the sites, to talk to the young people who were involved. And it really is what the government was made to do, to really help people, to push people up those ladders of opportunity, to help people become self-sufficient, to realize their potential, not to just sort of keep people in dependency. And that's what makes for a very strong society, because what do we have that's more valuable to us than our young people?
And Lim, if I could add, as we were thinking about this initiative, with the National Center of Housing, so that National Center of Child Welfare and Housing, we researched what would work or what we could do to actually do a program or put a program like this together, and what are some of the deficits. And again, this took years. This is not something that happened overnight. Like I said, some of the first iterations of this program went through the fire. Like, we initially took this and tried to mirror it after the VASH program, the same program that veterans use. And we took it back to the hopper and took it back and, started getting more and more input. And then we found that right solution. And that right solution we were able to present to Dr. Carson and his staff, with a lot of young people in the room. So it wasn't just the solution, because one thing that NCHCW and Action Ohio prides ourselves on is not just coming to DC to complain. We wanted to come to DC with a solution to end homelessness for young people aging out of foster care. But we also realized that we needed every silo to work together, from the Department of Labor to HHS to HUD. We needed everybody working in their collective areas to do what most of us as young people aging out of foster care feel as we look at the government as our parents. Once those parental ties are severed, the government is technically our parents. So we felt that it was up to the government to truly step in and make sure that we have a true path to self-sufficiency. And we were able to accomplish that with this particular initiative.
And Jamal, I've heard you talk about the mindset of possibility, changing that mindset. Can you just comment about how housing fits into that when as Dr. Carson mentioned, at 18 years old, not many of us are really ready to be on our own?
I mean, at 18, I wasn't ready to be on my own. Now, I made it look like I was ready to be on my own, but at 18, I wasn't ready. I was about to graduate from high school. I was going into what could be, I had my apartment. The agency provided the apartment, but the rules were after 6 months, everything stops, cut and dry. And, I was scared for that point, because I knew I wasn't making enough. I knew I wasn't making enough money to take up everything that the state was already paying for. And there are so many young people in that same boat, where they only are going to go so far with state help. And I knew if I didn't go to school, then after that 6 months was over, I was going to wind up homeless. Now, at the same time, even in school, there were times where dorms were closed, and a lot of young people or young adults at that point, like myself, did not have homes to go back to. So when you think about just needing to complete school, like, that's one of the top reasons why there's a lot of young people who attempt post-secondary education. They don't complete because now housing becomes an issue. So it's like, are you going to worry about housing, or are you going to worry about surviving or going to school? And, surviving and having somewhere to live always wins out. So this truly changes the possibilities of what could truly happen in the future, because once you remove that, that housing instability, then now you can truly focus on what's next in the future. You know, is it a trade school? Are you going to school? Are you going to, enter the workforce? That becomes less of an issue and more of, now I can truly focus on my future.
And part of the FYI program, when it's linked up with the family self-sufficiency program, there's a work or education requirement. We have Adora back. I don't know if you wanted to comment a little bit about that. I know you are taking advantage of that right now with school and work.
Yes, a little bit about the FSS program. It's basically an extension of the voucher, which takes it from 3 to 5 years, and it allows the foster care youth to basically take some more time to focus on school or work and things like that. And as Miss Lynn mentioned, yes, well, not Miss Lynn, Miss Evelyn, actually, as she mentioned, yes, there is a work and or a school requirement. So youth have the opportunity to either be flexible or to extend what they need to do as far as they can. They can do work and school. There's also a lot of incentives that are put into FSS, as far as like there's an escrow portion of it where it's basically like if you start out at a certain amount with your subsidization of rent, for you, just for basically wanting you to be better, the government will continue to, they'll match whatever income increases that you have. So for example, if somebody started out paying $60 a month for their rent because they didn't have a job or work or school or anything like that, and then maybe 6 months later into the program, they ended up getting a really good job or something like that, and
we may have lost Adora again. I think, but what she was meaning is that there was a lot of these perverse incentives to actually getting, doing better in work and getting a promotion, where some other HUD programs would increase your rent. And Doc, I know you've talked about this before, where we really wanted to change a lot of those perverse incentives.
And that's something that we all need to be thinking about. In many cases, government means well, but how is that helpful if somebody's trying to get ahead and they make more money and you say, report that so we can raise your rent? Or, you bring another person into the household who's got an income, you got to report that so you can raise their rent. And that certainly is not conducive to family formation. So at some point, I got a lot of resistance as the HUD secretary up on the Hill by people who said, no, we're keeping the status quo. But the status quo is not doing a whole lot to encourage people to climb the ladders of opportunity. And it's going to require all of us. And this is where, I think some of the nonprofit organizations that exist, the faith-based organizations that exist, community service organizations can really play a vital role in providing the incentives that people need to be successful.
And Lynn, I wanted to ask you, because there is a comment in our chat from Meg regarding the expansion of work colleges and whether those would help foster youth who are transitioning get into the work world. What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. Not because it's for everybody, but because we need everything available. And so depending on who wants what, I always say, let's do with, not for. Let's move forward with dignity and respect, hearing what our young kids are saying as they age out. And Jamal, I was 50 before I think I figured things out. So, 18 is way too early, but it's really important that education, school education, the ability to do that. We found at ACF, one of our biggest gaps during COVID, when the institutions of higher learning shut down and kids were not able to be in the dorms. And then they needed to make sure they had that laptop in order to continue classes. But then their former foster parents, COVID scared people as far as taking kids in. And we had call after call after call. And so we had a lot more homeless kids because we found a gap. So we have to make sure that education and housing is stable. It is an answer to a future, a good future, but we have to listen to Jamal and others, because without you all telling me what the gaps were, I would have missed it. So I think we have to listen more. And I think moving that education piece, it is absolutely critical for the kids.
And I'm glad you emphasized that, because I'm very fond of saying it really doesn't matter what a person's socioeconomic starting point is. If you give them a good education, they write their own ticket. And it's something we used to talk about a lot in this country, not as much anymore. And we need to really help people to see the advantages. You know, when you talk about the advantage of education, think about this. The demographic in this country, the group that has the highest per capita income is Nigerians. Now, if you know any Nigerians and you know any Nigerian families, you know that the baseline is a bachelor's degree. That's the baseline. There's so much emphasis on education. And, you know, when you get that good education, you make yourself valuable. An interesting phenomenon occurs. People pay you. So, you know, it has a lot more to do with what a person is able to offer, quite frankly, than what a person looks like. And that's not a message we hear very much these days.
I would add on to that, when we ask what people can do to help, whether it be the churches or nonprofits, that everybody can do something. It doesn't mean everybody's going to take in somebody who's aged out or somebody who's in foster care, but everybody can find a role, to Dr. Carson's point, to do some tutoring for that darn calculus class, or to do some mentoring because someone is feeling very alone in their college group because they don't feel normal. They don't go to Starbucks to do their study class because they don't have the $4 for the cup of coffee. So when you talk about normalizing things, that's where we come in. That's where community comes in. That's where churches come in, nonprofits come in, and we can say to somebody, everybody can do something. And because everybody can do something, we are all in, and we have to do this. This is not an option for us today to move this to another task force. This is today we are all in, and we have to do this for these kids. There's not an option. Just Lynn's thoughts.
And one of the things that the organizations do that are involved in the FYI program is they try to make sure that the apartments that are provided are in locations that are conducive to success. Yes. Because if you put it in a place where there's a lot of foolishness going on, it's very hard to stay separated from that as a young person.
I want to talk a little bit about something that Dr. Carson mentioned, which is, you know, family support and family formation. It's something we talk a lot about at API. I think it's really important we talk about it in this context of how do we really kind of change this on our head so we have less children who are going into foster care. How do we support families and really preserve families? I heard an interesting statistic, at least for Colorado, which I know Lynn is also a Coloradoan, but 80% of kids who are in the welfare system, foster care system, are taken away because of neglect, not abuse. And it just seems that if we provided more support to these families, that perhaps we could prevent more kids going into foster care.
So Evelyn, let me grab onto that. 80%, I don't know if that's the Colorado stat, but it is 60% is the consequences of neglect or poverty because of the You lose a home. One young boy told me he was removed because his family could not find a mattress for him. I think of the cost of foster care versus the cost of that mattress and the love of those parents and the trauma that's been caused. And we are losing some common sense and logic. But I think primary prevention, the Administration for Children and Families, the Children's Bureau, Casey Family, and others have pulled together what's called a Thriving Families initiative, where on the front end, they are wrapping around communities, bringing everyone to the table to prevent, its primary prevention before that call comes to the hotline. And then they go from that hotline call where Family First Prevention Services Act is doing prevention, but you have to be in the system first. So this is pre-system to prevent the need for the hotline call. And they are in some 10 to 12 communities right now. I expect over time that'll grow. It is one of the really best things I've seen as far as strengthening families who, regardless of zip code, caseworkers can go into those communities, wrap around those families, and make a difference so kids are not being removed because of the consequences of poverty. And a lot of that also we have to look at the legislation. Some legislation in certain states, neglect and poverty are the same, and that's not it shouldn't be the same. Neglect is very different than being poor. And it's just not a paycheck that makes a difference. It's that full wrap around to help somebody with employment, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, housing. So that's a really big deal that this new Thriving Families is working. And I'm working alongside with CityServe to continue to do that prevention work by bringing communities together around the families. This will have such significant impact if we hit that front end, because of the fact that it will decrease domestic violence, it will decrease disproportionality, it can decrease violence, it'll decrease everything we're worried about on that front side. And hopefully more kids stay in their homes with their loving parents and they eliminate that trauma of being removed.
Well, poverty is a root cause of so many issues. And we would be very smart to spend a little more time looking at why poverty exists in this country. It doesn't need to exist.
Exactly.
There are adequate resources in this country.
Yeah.
But the Brookings Institute did a very well-known study, a widely distributed study on poverty. And they concluded that there were a few things that you could do to reduce your likelihood of living in poverty to 2% or less. Now that should perk up everybody's ears. What are those things? And the first one, finish high school. The importance of a basic education. The second one, get married. The importance of a family and a support system. The third one, get a job. And fourthly, wait until you're married to have children. Now, those are things that you used not to have to tell people. Now it's news. But it's very simplistic, straightforward, and it works. That's the key. So if we develop policies that work around the facts, things that we know work, I think we'd be much more successful as a society.
And I think that's where all of the efforts that are made to help get kids to diploma that are dealing with truancy, we don't want a GED, we want a diploma, which means we need tutors, we need mentors, we need supports for finances so kids aren't working instead of school. Dr. Carson, you were so right on. It is not rocket science. It is the right thing to do so that we can tell our kids, we believe you can be something beyond what you are looking at today. And I think it works. I know it works. I've seen it.
One thing I tell young people now that I'm able to work with is you are not your current circumstance.
Yes.
But I also tell professionals in the field that we have to have a true compassion of what generational trauma has done to some of these families. A lot of these families are system adverse. So when we're handing them these resources, they're not ready to take them because of what they've experienced.
Right.
So you need some type of navigator to help walk them through to these resources, just to make sure they truly understand. Where we failed is saying, here's a plethora of things that that could help you and your family. But we're expecting them in the height of their trauma to just walk right into those resources.
Mhm.
And we all know that that is a hindrance, and that is a barrier to where some families don't readily take the assistance that's available, which is also important why when we go in to do these assessments, after we get those calls, that we really look at what the family is facing. That way we can really, really wrap around those services that they need. But again, not just handing it to them and tell them, call me when you after you receive the resource. It's walking them through the resource to the end.
That's such an important thing, because as an example, I think we've all heard the stories about people who win the lottery. 60% of them end up in worse shape than they were before they won, and they thought they had it made. But it was a matter of not having familiarity with how they use the resources. And the same thing applies to this. There are resources that are available, but we need those wraparound type services in many cases in order to make it work, fully recognizing that, someone who fully understands the system and understands how to utilize the system and their talents, you could take everything away from them and stick them on the street at Skid Row, and they will find a way back out of that. Someone who doesn't understand, you can put them in a penthouse and give them a 3-piece suit, and they'll find their way back down to the street. So it's a matter of making sure that you provide the appropriate assistance.
Well, and a lot of our stuff too that we've all worked on is connecting the folks at the grassroots level, where that's where the level of trust, as everybody understands, and respect comes in, where it's word of mouth on the street, it's word of mouth in the environments in the public school systems, which is another topic why, a lot of our kids are at times not having the proper success they need, because not every kid is going to go to college. Then you have the vocational programs like Job Corps or skill-based training programs that you can complement with education. And once you become more versed and you have more experience with your degrees, then you become that employable, human guru or Swiss Army knife that employers want to see, because they want people with experience and knowledge who can actually bring in strength in their team. So it's crucial to see that.
Well, Evelyn, we have 3 people here who actually have been through the system. What was it? What was that spark? What was that thing that got you through?
Something that I preach all the time is it just takes one person. It takes one person that is going to be dedicated, one person that's going to invest in you. I had one person, and I would say I had more than one person, but it was one person that actually got me to college. And that was a tremendous shift in where I was going. Now, I wasn't this kid that was always wanting to be on the street. No, I was working. I was headed towards, again, I was on my way to graduation. But this one person said, you have more to offer and you don't have a choice. I'm going to take you down to Central State University and, let you do an audition for the university music department. And the rest was history, right? But if it wasn't for that one person to push, then I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't have the kids that I have now. I have 14, about to be 4 teenagers. But it took that one person to truly believe and see what I couldn't.
Adora, we have you. What made the difference for you?
I think for me, it was more so being a little bit more well-rounded than I would say than the youth that were already in the system and that had been in the system for years. I came into the foster care system as a teenager, an adolescent, who just so happened to, lose my mom, and my father just wasn't prepared to take care of 4 children. So me having the values that my parents instilled in me in the first part of my life, I just feel like it kind of pushed me to be able to know what I was worth in the system. So once I, just acquired about things and learned about things, I didn't let anybody tell me otherwise. So I would, speak for myself and others, which is what I'm doing now. I would consider myself to be a keen advocate for foster care youth that just kind of want to know things and know the power that they truly have as ward of the state. So I think with that, and then also being able to be given the opportunity to go to college, because I did not know whether I was going to go to college or not. So just being, as Jamal said, having that one person to take a chance on you and just see what you see in yourself or what you don't see in yourself, and just motivating you to keep going. And as that happened, it just became more and more people that I came in contact with, Miss Ruthie being one of them. She's very instrumental in my life. I don't even know if I would have been on this webinar today without Miss Ruthie and Jamal. So, you know, you guys are really like my forever team. But yes, they just the people that actually cared and wanted to invest in you as a person and tap into the expertise that we have as youth, because we do have the experience that a lot of the officials that are delegating these policies and administration that they don't have. So, you know, use us, tap into us, and I think we will be all the more better because of it.
That's great. And Adora is talking about Ruth White, who we all love. She's at the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare, that both you can find Jamal and Adora there as well. And I think it's really interesting, you know, they are very strong advocates. And as Jamal said, there was somebody who was advocating for him and Adora advocating for herself. It's all, all along the spectrum of wherever you are at, you can get there. Chris, I know you have some lived experience as well. I wasn't sure if you wanted to share a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was, for me, Jamal said it, Adora said it, I think our patterns are all pretty much the same. We meet varieties of people. I would have to say that more of mine was, I kind of felt like a gypsy. I was moving around from place to place. I met so many different people and personality, good and bad. I was on the path of more bad than good as a young kid, but I got fortunate enough to where I met a couple people who actually directed me the right way. And then my foster parents, my last set of foster parents, which became my forever home, as Len would say, were very, very strong personalities, which I had already had a good work ethic, and they helped me see things through, and then directed me towards some other folks. But the biggest thing for me was I had some pretty strong male men that I responded to, as well as strong females. But I think for me, it was when I saw that fact of I can go for financial aid, and there was a box on that FAFSA form that says, were you a ward of the court? And then my world opened up, and I could apply for grants because I simply was someone who grew up in the foster care system. So I learned it was a one chance shot to take advantage of changing my future.
It's interesting that they all have that common thread of an individual, and that's to say something to all of us about what we can do, how we can be of value in this society, guide other people. In my case, it was my mother, who was such a strong personality. She had less than a third grade education. And most of the time we didn't even see her during the week, because she would leave at 5 a.m, working as a domestic, go from job to job to job, and get back at midnight. So we only saw her on the weekends. But, she directed us in the right way, and she made us read the books. And the books became my mentor as I started reading about scientists and surgeons and philosophers and entrepreneurs. And I began to realize through their lives that the person who had the most to do with what happened to you was you. There were all kinds of people around me saying, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. I always say, no one's ever done anything until somebody's done it. So don't ever let somebody stop you by telling you that no one's ever done it.
That's so right. And we're coming up to the end of our time together. I just wanted to let everyone have a chance to talk a little bit about what they're doing in this area. And we're getting a lot of comments about how people can help, how they can get involved in their community. You know, I think that there's a lot to comment on in terms of how we can better align some of our programs and, you know, talk about what works and what doesn't work. And Jamal, I'll start with you.
First thing I will say again, kind of bringing it back to FYI, is that what it does is it offers predictability. You know, we know exactly when a young person is going to age out, and this truly draws a bridge to keep that young person out of homelessness when done correctly, when all partnerships are in place. But I think one thing we have to continue to do is, you know, on the child welfare side, is what are we really and truly and honestly doing to make sure that there's support throughout the agency, that we are shifting the culture and making sure that we are truly there for families and for the young people that we serve. And I think you have to think about this too. We've done something for so long that we are in this groove of doing it the same way. We are now starting to shift in making sure that we wrap our arms around families. We are now starting to shift to make sure that we are making, we are giving our young people, that our young adults, what they need to truly be successful. That's a shift in what we've normally been doing. And I think if we continue to pay attention to that and continue to cultivate that, then we'll have better outcomes. We'll have less burnout in our child welfare agencies. We'll have less burnout with a lot of our foster parents as well. We just have to make sure that we're giving everyone the tools that they need to do a successful job.
Great, thanks, Jamal. Chris?
I would just echo everything Jamal said. I think the biggest thing is when you have systems in place, it is training, giving them information, letting them realize that what we did in the past is not going to always work. You mix it with the fresh perspective, you think outside the box, you look at the families you're impacting in their real time to keep them together as best as possible. And you build peace working to where it actually is a stronger bridge for them to have their own pathway of success.
Adora, we're just doing closing thoughts. Any last words for us?
Really just kind of agreeing on what Chris and Jamal said, just keeping the youth at the forefront, continuing to inform them, keeping them engaged throughout the whole process, possibly continuing the independent aspect a little earlier than aging out, more probably within the last year, so that they're getting acclimated into transitioning into emancipation and knowing what they're going to do, what's going to be put in place. Are they going to be utilizing FYI? Just having all those things in order with the structure that we're afforded from the system. And I think there's no way we can lose.
Great, thank you. Lynn, anything to add?
Every single thing everybody said is right on. And I think that the critical piece was that each person is unique, awesome, incredible, and they have their own journey. And we that are professionals in the system need to listen and be the ones that lift you up, not the ones that tell you what to do. I think that's absolutely critical. I also, the focus, as Adora just said, we need to do things earlier. One young boy I'm working with today, he's 23. He was in the system at 2, was still there at 5, at 10, at 15, and at 16. They said, "Wow, do you want an adoption plan?" That's not okay. We have to move faster. 122,000 kids waiting to have a forever home. It's time. Let's go.
Well, I just want to thank everybody, all the panelists, for your wonderful insights. And one of the things that really touches me is the fact that the three of you who have been involved in the foster care programs had other people who were very important to you and helped to direct your lives in the right way. And I think there's a lesson there for all of us to take to heart of what we can do. You know, you can help at the Boys and Girls Club, at the Y. Some of the Envision centers have mentorship programs. There are a variety of places, but you don't have to invest a lot of effort or money or time, but just showing that interest and frequently showing people that there is a way to be successful in this society, because sometimes they hear and see things that drive them in a negative direction. And just being a positive influence can make such a dramatic impact in someone's life.
Well, thank you all for joining us. And thanks to our audience for listening in. There will be a copy of this recording at americancornerstone.org. Please visit us there. Thank you so much.